Hey, everybody, good Tuesday evening, and welcome to another edition, another episode of Bowling with the FEF, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story live on our YouTube channel. We do it every week, and this time around, this week, we're going to do it twice in 2 days. So happy to let you know that this will not be our only show this week. We're coming back at you tomorrow with another great guest and two of the greatest content creators really in the sport right now this week. And I've mentioned it before. I love interviewing content creators, kind of picking their brains because, we all kind of do similar things, although we get there a little differently, and that makes it interesting to me. I hope you enjoy those types of interviews because we've got a whale of one tonight and can't wait to bring him on because this is something that has been months in the making, and I'm really excited about it. So happy to bring our guest out in just a bit. First, I just want to say thank you. Today, we passed the 700 subscriber mark. Now, subscribers on these channels can go up and down. And 700 is kind of a smaller number, especially compared to the amount of subscribers our guest tomorrow has amassed. But it's something. It's they call it vanity metrics, but it's always excited to see the subscriber number go up. And I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. Free to do, and you can click on that little icon logo, I should say, in the bottom right, and get subscribed to the channel. You'll be one of the first to know when we have new videos, new live streams, and it is a big help to me as a creator of this content. So thank you to all of you who have subscribed, all 700 of you at the moment, and I'm hoping that total goes up just because then I know there's interest, and love that people find this content relevant, bowlers, non-bowlers alike. And as long as that's the case, I will keep doing it. Also want to wish a happy birthday to episode 26 guest Brent Prentice. Brent has been a supporter of this show from back when it was in its infancy. He was, like I said, the 26th guest on the show. He's a proprietor at Cedar Vale Lanes in Eagan, Minnesota, which has been the home of the PWBA Twin Cities Open. Although that tournament will not be there in the coming season, we certainly hope to get it back there because it's a great event. I know the ladies love to bowl at Brent's Center, and why wouldn't they? It's a great place. So happy birthday to you, Brent. Hope you're enjoying your day, even if you don't see this live tonight. And if you are on live tonight, remember, we've got a chat window open. Feel free to weigh in, shout out, let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to hear from you. And if you are watching on replay, just know that there is a comment window underneath, and feel free to leave a comment, and we will certainly get back to you as quickly as possible. Well, Bowling with the FEF is brought to you by Chip Magnet Salsa. Chip Magnet is a local company, at least local to me, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, distributing quality salsas, relishes, and more to stores in more than 38 states across this great country. For the exquisite flavor of Chip Magnet Salsa, you can let your fingers do the walking. Go to chipmagnetsalsa.com and get yourself a jar of some of the greatest salsa you will ever try. Chip Magnet, raise your snack standards. And thank you again to Chip Magnet for all of your support in Bowling with the FEF. Well, let's talk about our guest tonight. He started his bowling career decades ago, and he has been a competitor. He has been one of the most well-known lane maintenance experts in the industry. He's been a tournament director for a region of the PBA. He's been a coach. He's been a writer. And you might recognize his golden voice that echoes across the internet and your favorite podcasting platform every week on his show, Phantom Radio. And he always says that's why they call it the fastest show in sports. And he's not kidding. It's a fast one, but it's excellent content. And he is Len Nicholson, and he is joining us from Sacramento, California. Len, it is a pleasure to have you on Bowling with the Fef tonight.
Andrew, I really appreciate you having me on. And this is the first time, obviously, I've been on. And I was really impressed by the opening. It had me tapping my toe. I was getting excited. It's really exciting opening. And number two, you got a wonderful voice for radio, just like you say I do, but you're much better looking than me. So I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, we've been working on this for a few months, and really excited to have you on to talk about your story and everything you do for bowling, because there's a lot of it. And we'll get to at least some of the high points as we go here. I want to start out with a quote from Tom Clark, the PBA commissioner. He wrote me a message and let me know that you are the godfather of oil and the godfather of bowling podcasts. I'll get my logo out of the way there. Do you see yourself that way, or is it kind of strange to think of how far you've come in your bowling career?
Number one, let's talk about the podcast. First of all, I didn't realize this, but when I went to work for John Davis at Kegel in 2002, he said, you need to go on and people need to know what you know. He says, you've been around for a long time and we want to pass along some information. So someone on our staff recently looked it up and found that I've done 1,200 shows and it's been 20 years. It may be the longest running scheduled podcast in all of history, because for it to be recognized, it's got to be scheduled at a certain time each week. And we've been doing it now every Wednesday, like I say, since 2002. And we only missed 2 weeks because of the hurricanes that went on in Florida a couple of years ago. So that's been fantastic. I don't feel like I'm the godfather of oil. Obviously, there was a man named Ramo Pachetti. His father invented the oil back in the 40s. I might have refined it a little bit. They had lane machines back in the day, and we had 4 or 5 of them that were in use across the country. And there were some problems on the tour, and they magnify all kind of problems. And so I started using a spray gun because I couldn't see where the oil was going through a machine. And there was a lot of problems with the wicks back in the day, with the oil transferring through the wicks getting onto the lane. And obviously, if the bowlers don't have a ball reaction that's similar to what it was yesterday, you're going to hear about it. So There was a lot of complaints going on. There was a lot of problems. And we eventually started in 1971 with a lane maintenance program on the tour. And my first partner, the guy actually that started it, was Sam Baca. And he was a bowler on the tour. He won a couple of titles. He knew a whole heck of a lot. And we set up a program where he would go in advance, check out the facility, leave me a recommendation of what I should do to the lanes, and then go from there. So we learned right on the job. But it was an exciting thing for 7 or 8 years, and we finally got it down to a science, and we thought we had it. And then all of a sudden they went from wood lanes to synthetics, and they went from plastic balls to urethane, and everything changed, obviously. So it was a whole new learning experience. And you watch it today, it's another new learning experience. You got two-handers and you got synthetics, and the guys are hooking the ball from lane to, hooking from gutter to gutter. It's a totally different game. So that's just the way it's been for 100 years. So you got to live with it.
Yeah. You got to, I guess as a bowler, you got to adapt to change. Sherry White is watching us live, says, hey guys. And she says that Tom is 100% correct. So,
well, let me say something about Sherry. Hardest working woman in bowling, maybe person in bowling. She's there midnight, 6 o'clock in the morning. If I send a message, I get an answer within 5 minutes. I mean, I don't think she ever sleeps. And she's got a group of people out there in Vegas. I don't know how many now, but it's growing by leaps and bounds. And she's just a wonderful woman.
Yeah. the Balls and Babes Facebook group. We're definitely going to get into that a little bit on later on here, but you're right. She's incredibly responsive and has been for me too. Just a delight to have her watching live and seeing what she does in her Facebook group is a lot of fun for me too. Another I guess comment that I sought out was from John Janowitz, who a lot of people know as is a lane maintenance guy in the Kegel company, and he told me that you are on his Mount Rushmore of lane maintenance, along with John Davis, Steve Cross, and John Forst.
Wow, that's one heck of a compliment coming from John. He started out as a bowler in Florida, learned his trade, became one of the best bowlers, not only in Florida, but now around the world. I don't know how many Team USAs he's been on, how many tournaments he's won. In my opinion, he is the best lane man in the world. He is a serious man. He doesn't mess around. As a matter of fact, before John Davis died, he said if he was leading a tournament, John Davis, he said, if I'm leading a tournament, I want John Janowitz to be doing the lanes. In other words, he trusted him that much to do the lanes the way they're supposed to be done. And he also said the same thing about John Forst before he passed away. So Kegel's been blessed to have some of the top guys of all time taking care of the lanes.
Sure. And he was nice enough to come on our show, I believe, about a year ago. So we heard his story. And if you've never seen him bowl, wow, what a physical game. It's incredible.
Oh, and he doesn't just hope it works. He works his butt off, working on his game. He goes down to Kegel. I don't care if he shot 740 in the league last night. He's down there the next day working on his game. I said, what are you doing? You're going to wear yourself out. Oh, no. He said, I left a 10 pin in the seventh frame. I can't have that happen. Guy's a perfectionist. I mean, yeah. He's the best.
Yeah. Sherry says you're way too kind. I would, hey, it's takes one to know one, right? I want to talk about we're kind of in the point of the year where you don't really have a schedule for the next PBA season. The past season is in the past, but we're at a point where we know, at least those of us who are fans think we know, we're pretty sure that Jason Belmonte is going to win another Player of the Year award, and that would be number 7. I noticed in one of your books, The Tour Would Be Great If You Didn't Have to Bowl, that you had a section in this book about Earl Anthony, who has had 6 Player of the Year championships. So I guess I got to ask, at the point we're at right now, Belmo or Earl? Is there a clear-cut winner as far as greatest of all time is concerned, or can you even go between eras like that?
Fortunately for me, I've been involved in sports my whole life. My dad was a halfway good amateur athlete. He played baseball, basketball, and all that. And he got me interested in sports from day one. I played all the sports in high school. And then in bowling alley, grew up next door to where I was born and living. And I got involved in bowling and was fortunate enough to bowl doubles in my junior league with Billy Hardwick. And he was one of the greatest of all time. So then I went to work on the tour and I saw the greatest. I saw these guys, from the 60s all the way up to the 2000s. And I saw them all come and go. And I'm in one fortunate position where I've been able to watch them all and know what they were bowling on, okay, what kind of a pattern they were bowling on. And I think that the proper answer would be it's very hard. In fact, I think it's impossible to be able to rate different eras. It's like saying, who is better, Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth or Willie Mays or whoever? Different eras, there's different types of balls, different types of equipment. And I'll just tell you what, in the early days, it was Earl, no question about it.
Yeah.
And then Walter Ray came along, and he was every bit as good as everybody that's ever thrown a bowling ball. I think he had 6 bowlers of the year too. Yeah. And now we see Jason, it's just, he's what do you want to call it? He's not a victim of the environment. he's taken advantage of the environment because he developed a different kind of a style, but that different style is what he needs to win. So he is awesome. I had him on the show when he was first coming out, and I saw him, and I saw how good he was going to be, and I wished him all the greatest luck in the world. I respect his game, but I'll tell you what, there's three different guys there: Earl, Walter Ray, and Bill Moe. We got a two-hander, we got a lefty, and we got Walter Ray, who, pretty much of a straight player, but he can play anywhere in the lane. So that's three all-time greats. I don't know who's number one.
I love that answer because I always struggle with that too. It's, the topic of GOAT is such a tough one with different styles, different factors, different eras. No, I totally agree. I think those three are pretty much head and shoulders above, but yeah, to determine one over the other is kind of tough.
Yeah, to be Bowler of the Year, that's a whole season, and you're rated pretty much by not only the sports writers and all that, but even your own peers, and they know who the best players are. So, I mean, over a period of time, if you've won 6 Bowlers of the Year and another guy's bowled 7, I mean, it's a toss-up. Earl quit early. I mean, if he'd bowled 10 more years, how many more would he have gotten? So,
sure.
Let's just put it that way. They're all great, and they all bowled in different eras. So let's leave it at that.
Totally agree. Len, let's get into your bowling story. You you grew up in California, and in your book, you talk about meeting Billy Hardwick at Hillsdale High School in San Mateo, California. You say that during football practice, you put him in the mud a couple times, and but you say that he got you back by getting you into bowling. So tell us about what you remember about, first getting into the sport and falling in love with it.
All right. As I mentioned, I got involved heavily with sports ever since I was a little kid. They opened a new high school. I went to the new high school. I played baseball, football, basketball. I was a jock. I was a big guy, pretty athletic. And then they opened the bowling center right next door to where I lived. And naturally, we all went down there. I was a junior in high school going into my junior year. And what's this? We got to try this out. So there was a lady at the front door. She was passing out flyers. Come on, I want you to join a junior league. And she gave one to everybody. And we filled it out. And then she called everybody during the week. So on Saturday, come on in. And they formed a doubles league, juniors, age groups. And they put me with Billy. Well, I was the biggest guy in the league, and he was the smallest guy. And he was just a character. I loved him right away. And he was feisty and fiery. He was 5'3", 99 pounds. He was a little guy. And I was about 6'2", 190, pretty big. And he would laugh at me because I was lumbering around, and he was trying to develop a style. Well, I says, you're a competitor. Why don't you come out for the football team? Because we got a small school. It's brand new. Come on. Oh, can I play? I said, I don't know. Let's go. So he shows up. And the coach says, we need players. We only got 30 guys, but I can't give you a uniform, son. He says, you got sweat clothes on there. You got these high top tennis shoes. They were tied around the top about 8 times. Looked like a sack of potatoes on the bottom of his leg. And he says, well, I just want to play. Can I hold the bag? And everybody's looking at, all right. So they put him as a cornerback. The very first play, it was around the horn. And I come around, and he's standing there with a bag, and I blasted him, and he went sliding back, and he fell into the mud. And so he rolled over on his face, and everybody's laughing. And then I stepped on his shoe with my cleats, and he had canvas tennis shoes on. And he just looked at me like, if he was big enough, he would have taken a swing, but he didn't. and we all laughed at him. And he looked and he says, I'm going to laugh at all you guys someday. And we thought, sure, okay. Well, of all the guys, baseball, football, basketball, he was the only one that succeeded, and he was the least athletic at all. But he put his mind to it. He had determination, and he didn't really have a great, solid physical game, but he had a way to get the ball in the pocket. And when he got hot, which was several times, he was ball of the year twice, and he just never missed. I mean, he threw a full roller, dead straight. very few revs, but he just never missed the pocket. And that's all attributed to his mind. The mental game is the most strongest thing you could possibly have. So we were friends for 65 years till he passed away. So, yeah, I owe a lot to Billy. He taught me a lot about the mental game because when you watch those guys bowl, I mean, some of those guys are just beautiful, Brian Voss and David Ozio. They could never make a bad shot in their life, and you watch Billy stumble, trip, fall, slide, slip, and strike, you thought, how did he do it? It's with his mind, and you see the same thing in all sports. The guys with the best mental game are usually the best.
Yeah. Yeah. How about, starting out for you? I mean, we know that, he became an incredible professional, like you said, player of the year a couple times, Hall of Fame, the whole bit. You were in that junior league too, right?
Yeah. My sports were mostly bigger, baseball, basketball, football. I always wanted to be somebody, a ball player. But to get to that next level, it's not just luck. You got to really be one of the top notch. Well, time went by, and I got married young. Then I got divorced in 1969. Well, at that particular time in bowling, there were some problems going on with the lefties and the righties. The lefties had an extreme advantage simply because the wooden lanes were all worn out, and the lefties had a better, smoother shot on their side. So Billy says, why don't you come back? He was bowler of the year in 69. Why don't you come back here and live with me? That way you don't have to go through all the problems of divorce and all that. So I moved in with him in Louisville. And I got a job at the bowling alley where, fortunately, they all loved bowling there. It was a bowling hotbed. And it was Pee Wee Reese's lanes. And he was a baseball player. And I got along with him real well. And we would have parties at Billy's house. He moved back there to be centrally located so he could come home in between, tournaments. And he was bowler of the year, and he had that Miller High Life commercial. Well, they gave him beer for a year or forever. And so every week, a big truck would pull up, put Miller High Life in his garage, and then on the weekends, every other weekend probably, all the guys would show up and have parties, barbecues, swimming pool, the whole 9 yards. And then at night, we'd play cards. And after about 40 beers each, these guys would start picking on each other, the lefties. If they didn't block the lanes, you never beat me. And the righties say, well, if the lanes weren't screwed up, you never cash. And so the best of friends would start arguing, and I had to break up a couple fights. Well, Sam Baca was one of the bowlers. And I said, Sam, what's all this? He goes, lefties and righties. And He said, someday we'll start a program, blah, blah. And he says, so learn all you can down at the bowling alley. So I went down to the bowling alley. I talked to the lane guy, learned as much as I could from him. And then I got a job as a desk man at night. And it was kind of funny because in late 60s, this is when all the lefty, righty problems started happening, even on the women's tour. In the ABCs everywhere. So if the manager would come in at 10:30 at night and he'd look around when the league was getting done, the earlier league, and if everybody was in the bar, he knew everything was good. So how good I'd announce the scores, 235 on 9 and 10. Well, the following week he'd peek in, and if nobody was there, he knew the lanes were screwed up. And I didn't know anything about lanes at all, right? So he said, what happened? I said, I don't know. Something went wrong. They're throwing the shoes at me, rental shoes. I'm ducking behind the desk here. He says, oh, yeah, our lane machine's screwed up. So I talked to the lane guy, and I started finding out all these problems. And obviously, the more you learned, if there's a small problem, let's say on the left side, where it's a little bit better, the better players take total advantage of it. It's like they have a foot of area, So same thing on the right. If they're nice on the right, real nice on the right, they'll drown the lefties. So it's really an environment sport, and it becomes very unfair sometimes, especially if the lane surface is bad.
Sure. Yeah.
So we started doing that, and he says we're going to start a tournament, a lane maintenance program. And he says, I've talked to the headquarters, and he says, why don't you go next year, go out with the guys on the tour and room with them and learn what's going on. So the funniest part was, so I got to meet most of these guys when they come over to Billy's for parties on Friday nights and stuff. And so I called up Jim Godman, one of my really good friends that I met. I said, Jim, I'm going to come out there. Can I room you? Oh, yeah, you can sleep on my floor. No problem. But I says, well, I need money. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll get 4 or 5 guys together. We'll all give you $25. You can be our errand boy. They called me what the hell they called me? I forget. Anyway, gopher. I was a gopher. I ran around, pick them up, McDonald's, candy, or whatever, take them to the airport, do their laundry. And this went on for like 6 months. And I was at every tournament. Everybody got to know me. I got to know all the bowlers. I would go in the middle of the night and talk to the lane guy. What are you doing tonight? Well, who are you? And I'm Billy Hardwick's manager. Oh, okay. They tell me everything, and I'd watch and I'd learn, and I'd call Sam. Sam, here's what they're doing. Well, we'd see the finals. The top 10 were left-handed. Well, we're not going to do that when we start this program. And then we got to San Jose, and there were 16 lefties in the finals. And those 16 finalists, they were all left-handed. And the PBA Tour said, that's it. We got to do something. So we started the program in the summer of 71.
Okay.
And we stayed with that, me and Sam, for 7 or 8 years. And they made a big mistake with us. And what that was, this is kind of inside, but there was no money for lane maintenance back in the day. So they attached a $5 lane maintenance fee onto each bowler. So there's 160 bowlers, right?
Yeah.
$5. That was $800 they took in. And that wasn't enough to support 2 guys on the road, airfare, motels, rental cars, and all that. Plus, the problem was now everybody thought they had a shot because they paid $5, right? Yeah. And so, well, I paid you my $5. Why didn't I have a shot?
Yeah.
Well, you stink. That's why. It's hard to say it, but you had to tell them that.
Yeah. John also said that John Janowitz said that, that not only were you a big influence on him, that you took him under your wing, but he mentioned a seminar that he went that you were presenting at. And, he said, not only did you predict, a lot of things that ended up happening, ended up coming to fruition, but one of the things that he mentioned was that that you taught him how more of the scoring equation had as much to do with the pit area and the topography as it does the oil pattern. And a lot of conspiracy theories about lane maintenance were just that, conspiracy theories. Is that something that you found out right away, starting out in this lane maintenance program, or is that something that you learned over time?
Sam knew about it before I did because he bowled on the tour. Okay. And he was a good bowler. In some weeks, he didn't have a shot. He was shut out before it even started because the lane pattern didn't fit his type of game, and the lefty would dominate. Other weeks, proprietors go, no lefty's going to make it in my house, so they would block the lanes on the right. And so it was a lefty-righty thing all the way. When we started, we had a case history file built up from the last couple of years when I was out there, and we said, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that because it's a failure. And there were, like I said, 4 or 5 machines. There was a couple of machines that we had to eliminate because they were nothing better than left-handed machines. So we talked to all kinds of lane men, resurfacers around the country, distributors, and we found out that this worked and that didn't work. So we were going to use only what worked. So what happened was we would go to a tournament house, let's just say Portland, the first tournament of the summer tour, and we'd put down XYZ, whatever amount of pattern it was. And it would take 200 over to make the finals, and there was 4 lefties in the finals, and everybody was happy. We got it, Pards. So we go to Seattle the next week, do the exact same thing, and it was totally different. And everybody goes, why didn't you do them like you did last week? Well, we did. Oh, bull. They're not even close to the way they were last year. Well, maybe it's not the oil pattern. Maybe it's the shape of the lane. Yeah. So we started watching, different parts of the lane. There's outside shots, there's track shots, there's inside shots. So in the old days with wooden lanes, resurfacers used to put a groove in the lane. It would either be the fourth arrow area or the second arrow. Brunswick, their philosophy was cut the lane so there's an inside shot where, there's a low spot in there. So the ball would always come back. AMF, they didn't want to be like Brunswick, so they said, we got to do it like our own self. Most bowlers bowl around the second arrow. So we'll put a depression around the second arrow. So that depression is what we started oiling the lanes to. So, and if you look in the histories in the 70s, especially when we were in charge, there was power players back then, Barry Asher, Jim Godman, Don Johnson, the guys that threw a lot of ball, not compared to today's a lot of ball, but they play the third and fourth arrow. And they win most of their tournaments in a Brunswick house because it was an inside shot. The Hardwicks and the Burtons and the Sutars, the guys that threw it straight, they won in AMF houses where they went down and in. So we suddenly knew, oh man, look at this. The topography means a lot. So when Sam would go in advance, he would measure the topography, and right away we would know who resurfaced this place. Oh, an AMF crew. All right, it's going to be an outside shot. So we started learning about that, and then there would be good jobs and bad jobs. The good jobs, when the lane was nice and smooth, the ball would roll true, and when it hit the pins, they'd blow up, boom. But if it was a bad job and the lane, the ball would bounce and go down the lane all screwed up, you hit the pocket 10 times a game, carry 2 of them, the scores are low. And so John Johnson, who was awesome back in the day, I remember one time he made 5 shows in a row at the Firestone, okay? And one of the guys, they used to interview him at the top 5 on Friday night. And one guy says, Don, he says, I watch you bowl. I hit the pocket 8 times a game. You're only hitting the pocket 6 times a game. How can you beat me? And Don said, I'll never forget this. He goes, it's not how often you hit the pocket. It's how you hit the pocket. Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of like you get a strong man swinging all his might and hitting a golf ball 200 yards. You get a little teeny guy with rhythm, and it blasted out 300 yards because he's got timing and rhythm. It's not power, it's technique. So,
yes. Yeah.
So the more we learned and the more we knew, the easier they got the job. Yeah. And the only reason we left is because we wouldn't get a raise. There's no way. You guys are lane men. That's the bottom of the totem pole, Mm-hmm. But by then we'd earned reputations, and Sam went on to work for a ball company, and I went to run a bowling center. And then they called me back. I quit that job 5 times, by the way. And every time they wouldn't give me a raise, so I'd quit, right? And then when I was gone for a month or 2 months, we'll give it to you. Come on back. We're having a war out here. So it's kind of funny.
And then there was that one tournament that you described in your book that Bob Strampy had what you called one of the greatest performances you had ever seen. And it was kind of an anomaly because of what happened with lane maintenance.
Yeah. Well, Strampy was great before anybody ever heard of me. He bowled in a team era back in the 50s, He in his 70s, he was getting closer to, retirement and all that. But he was still a great bowler. Well, we went to New Orleans, this place. I can't think of the name right now because I've kicked it out of my mind because this place was a zoo. In fact, if you've had Larry Lichstein on the show, right?
I have. Yep.
Okay. Larry used to be in charge of all the player services. He hang up the banners and all that. So in this one particular house, I says to Larry, Larry, you hanging up the thing for the show tomorrow, all the players? Yeah. I says, come here. I says, last year when I was here, I put my initials underneath the drop sweep, where the ball comes out of the back. Mm-hmm. Underneath there's a little flat spot where you usually get it with caps and gutters, right? Mm-hmm. And so I says, I put my initials there. He goes, yeah, so what? I says, they're still there. They haven't touched the place with a dust mop yet. He goes, no way. So he puts his in there. The next year, they were both there. It was awesome. This place was a dungeon. Yeah, so anyway, they're bowling. And if you bowled the 200 game, you bowled good. You had to get a couple doubles and make your spares, and the scores were always low, and the lefties would usually win there. Don Helling, he won there 3 or 4 times. He was a lefty. That's about the only place he ever won. But Strampy got on a roll, and he averaged like 230. And I don't remember the exact scores right now, but it was somewhere around 230 for the tournament. And it was like unbelievable, That's like taking a dime and putting it in a shot glass like 30 feet away, and then making it carry. I mean, he was awesome. Some of them guys were just unreal. You hear about the Budweiser team and Bluth and Carter and Hennessy and those guys. They could hit a dime from a mile away, They bowled on what they call track shots, where there was a groove in the lane, no problem. As long as that groove wasn't too deep, the ABC or the USBC would go in and say, "Hey, you can't do that. You got to flatten them out a little bit more." Sure. But we don't have that anymore because now we have panels. And sometimes these panels, if they're put in properly, the scores will be really high. But if one panel's this way and one panel's that way, and the ball's going all different ways, that's the topography of that particular house. So I've had several houses call me, you told a guy down the street, blah, blah, and he says, they're averaging 240. I can't get 220 averages over here. Well, you got to get your lanes flattened out. You can't make a silk purse out of whatever, Salzer or something like that.
No, you can't. Either they're flat or they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You
because also, the thing that one thing that to keep in mind, and I always tell this to all the lane guys I talk to, just remember gravity. You can't beat gravity. Mm-hmm. If you put a bowling ball on the side of a cliff, it's going to roll off. Yeah. That happens to the bowling ball. If there's hills and valleys going down the lane, one time it's going to not finish, next time it's going to hook too much, because that lane is not flat. So I don't care. Methuselah can't go down there and make up a good shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You had mentioned in a biography you sent my way that you have 4 300s and 2 800s, but they were all with plastic bowling balls.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you also mentioned that in the only PBA tournament you bowled, you had a 300.
That's what you call a miracle. I did take up bowling. I was pretty athletic. And when I ran the 2 bowling centers I ran, I would bowl. I'd bowl in the scratch league and all that. And I did the lanes in the house to make sure, that we didn't get scores thrown out. Because back in those days, they would throw the score out and the proprietor, the bowler would get all pushed out of shape. Sure. A lot of times the whole team would quit. This ain't fair. The hell with ABC, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so I bowled a lot. I gave a lot of lessons because I'd learned a lot from all those guys. But I'll tell you what, I had Dick Ritker, John Jowdy, Freddie Borden. All these great coaches were hanging around practice sessions. And man, I'd be listening, what's this, what's that? So when I left the PBA, I'd go to a bowling center. Oh, you've been with the PBA? Oh, help me with my game. Well, I would just tell them what those guys told the bowlers, and I learned a whole heck of a lot. So, I bowled 4 300s. Of course, the lanes were nice because I did them. Okay. But Wayne Webb moved to Tucson, and I knew Wayne because he started before we left, me and Sam, and he was like making about $30,000 a year, and he couldn't cash or make the finals even if he had to go down and in. If he could throw the ball to the right and hook it back, he had a good chance, okay? So he came down to Tucson. I was working at Golden Pin Lanes where we had the tour, and he came in and he goes, I'm in a bowl league here. I'm moving to town. Okay, Wayne. He says, my game. What do you think? I says, you got a weakness in your game. You got to come in early in the morning. Well, I'll do the lanes like we do on the tour. And I says, but you got to line the dust. You got to clean the lanes with me. I'm not going to do it all for nothing. All right, tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock. Well, tomorrow morning never came because Wayne Webb isn't going to get up at 4 o'clock to do lanes, right? So the next week I see him, I said, don't even talk to me, man. I got people that pay me to come in and help me, and they're paying me, and I'm helping them. You don't even pay, I was going to help you. Okay. So we put him on video, and we found out what it was. He is so strong. If you can picture Wayne Webb,
Sure.
short guy, his forearms were that big back in the day. And when he would throw the ball on the backswing, his arm would open up like this. He was so strong, the weight of the ball didn't make any difference. And he would muscle it, and he'd always overturn the ball. So we had the video on. I said, look at that, Wayne. You know, as soon as you have a backswing, your muscles get all big. So he held the ball down here, low. And now he's bowling like Salvino, no muscle in the swing. And now he's able to go down and in. Well, they had this regional tournament over in Santa Maria. And at the time, they had a thing that the PBA, if you won a regional tournament, you could go to the Regional Winners Classic. And it was a huge tournament because they wanted to get the regional guys involved, because the winner of that would get an exemption to go on the tour, all the regional guys. So we went over to Santa Maria. And so we get there, and I knew Ted Hoffman, who was the regional director, because I was from the Bay Area, and that's where he's from. And so they're getting ready to go, and he says, Lenny, he says, I need a pacer. You want a ball? I says, no, I don't have my stuff. You know, I can't bowl. I'm no pro. Oh, you remember? Yeah, I'm an associate member, just to show support, blah, blah, blah. He goes, come on. I can't have a threesome go out there. It's not fair. You know, I said, I don't have no stuff. Get some shoes, you know. And I said, I don't have a shirt. I don't want to get fined $20. Oh, you don't have to wear a shirt. Well, my wife had a ball in Wayne's car, and he was a heck of a great ball driller. So he says, go ahead, take that ball, he says, and open up the fingers and the thumb and throw it. So I did. It went 80 feet and never turned over, right? He goes, I got to put a hole up above the – so he did. And now it wrinkled. And then he put a bigger hole above the fingers. And it wrinkled a little bit more. So long story short, which is impossible for me, he has this hole up there. You could have driven a Jeep into it, right? This thing's going down, and bam, bam. Everybody's looking at me. You a Lane man? I go, yeah, but yeah, I got a great shot. So they put me with Jay Robinson, who was a good regional player. In fact, he won a couple times on the tour, and he's looking at me laughing. You bowl? I go, well, I'm pacing, whatever you call it. And so with 2 to go, I'm beating him. He puts his ball on his shoulder. We're going to the next pair. He says, if you beat me, he says, I'll kill you. And he was dead serious. His eyeballs were like slits.
Oh, my God.
I says, Jay, you're throwing the ball. Roll it, man. Roll it. Well, he shot 259, 259, the next two, and he ran by me like I was standing still. But the shot was around the 5 board, and I had the first 9. My mom was sitting there because her friends lived in Santa Maria, and they came down to visit their friends. And she goes, are you boy? I says, yeah, Mom. She goes, well, I heard you were pretty good. I said, I'm not this good, you know. Yeah. And I hit the first 9. And so now I'm shaking because my mom's she's watching. And I'm like this. I swear, I could see my hand doing this. So I threw the ball. I hit around 12. Okay. And it sat right there, flush. Oh. So now I knew I had between 5 and 12. You know, I had a little area there.
Sure.
And so the next ball I pulled even more, and I threw it down 15. And I'm looking at 5. I didn't want to let go. I was afraid to let go because you're scared. Yeah. I was going to throw it in the gutter. So the last one, I don't know where it went. It struck, and I got a 300 ring, and there were 5 300s in the tournament, and I still got the thing, the PBA press guide, where if you bowled a 300, they had a 300 dollar pool. So 5 guys, I got $60. So okay. Yeah, so that year I averaged, I shot like 250 over. So I averaged 250 or 225 I averaged. Mm-hmm. And I won $60. Well, Wayne was bowler of the year. He averaged 219, but he won 140 grand. So this ain't fair, man.
Yeah.
I average you. But yeah, that's my 300 PBA story. It's a miracle.
And I'm sure you remind him of that every chance you get.
I do. He's kind of held that against me too.
On the lane maintenance front, Tom said that lane maintenance in pro bowling is an incredibly difficult science where sports, fairness, and technology converge, and that you were the perfect type of person to be the eye of that storm. You mentioned, the money that, they weren't paying what you needed, and you left and came back a few times.
Right.
What made you just, leave it for good? And did you leave it for good at the right time?
Well, that's a good question. I've never been asked that before, but just to review that question a little bit was growing up in sports, hoping to be an athlete of something someday. I didn't know if I was going to be a baseball player or a football player. I knew it wouldn't be a basketball player because I barely touched the net. They couldn't jump, I had white man's disease. So I'd always hoped to be an athlete. And then when this happened and I went to live with Billy, there was an opportunity to get involved with sports.
Yeah.
And here's my best friend. He's bowler of the year and he's bitching and moaning. What's the matter, Billy? He says, oh, the lanes suck, And I'm thinking, if you're a good athlete, you're going to be good all the time. But that's not the case in bowling. If the lanes aren't conducive to your style and it's impossible for you to adjust to it, you're going to get shut out. I don't care, if the lanes aren't right. Yeah. And so I set out to say, I'm going to bring some integrity to this. And Sam Baca was really a smart guy. He was a bowler. He knew a lot about lanes. He knew about ball drilling and all that. And every chance we had, we would see a distributor in that particular area of the country, and we'd go pick his brain. Million questions. Why this? Why do you do that? Why? And then we met the guy that resurfaces the lanes, Danny Galicchio. His father invented the lane machine that sanded the lanes. And we learned about depressions and slopes and all that kind of stuff. And so there was a lot of talk about, this guy did the lanes for his friend. This guy did it for that, And so what I did right away was we got $30 a day. I'll give you this little background nugget. We got $30 a day per diem. That was for your room, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your laundry, and other incidentals. $30. There's no way. Even Motel 6 was like 20 back in then.
Sure.
So I says, I can't live on that. Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Well, I was sleeping on the floor with all my buddies. So I made it a point to room with lefties and righties both at the same time. Okay. So my best friends were the G Squad, which I mentioned in the book. Mm-hmm. Godman, Gearhart, and Glover. 3 of the best guys in the world, all great bowlers, all champions, and volatile guys. If they didn't like what they saw, they would tell you. So at the end of each block, they would all bowl together. We'd go in the bar and sit in a 4 table for seats for 4 people, and they'd start bitching, whoever. And we had a rule that 5 minutes was bitching. And usually one of the 3 guys would bowl good. And he'd have a fork and he'd have a glass, and the guy would start bitching. And at the end of 5 minutes, ding, the bitching ended, and that was it. So it got out of their system. They knew I wasn't trying to screw them, Mm-hmm. They're my friends. Why would I screw you? Because you're a lefty, And I had a joke, I don't know, this isn't probably FCC or something, but, I said,
it's the internet.
Okay, so one of my lines, which you probably realize my personality is a little bit crazy, but I says, my wife's left-handed and I don't even screw her. Why would I screw a lefty, So anyway, I just felt that there was integrity involved in it because sport is sport, Yeah. The best should win. So.
Okay. Mike Valenzano, watching us live, says Phantom is the greatest human being ever to be put on God's green earth. That he misses you.
Wow. Give him my best. He has a podcast himself.
Yeah. The
with
Bone
Parker
and Zano
Bone's
Zone.
son.
Yeah.
And they talk a lot of the controversial things. They're not afraid to face it heads on. Mm-hmm. And, Mike, I met him through the internet, just like I'm meeting you through the internet.
Yeah.
And tell Mike that I love his wife because her name's Jackie. And she always, if he ever starts to moan and groan, she says, don't listen to him. He's just a bowler, blah, blah, blah. So me and her have a nice relationship over the internet. I've never met him in person, but I love them both.
Yeah, I haven't met him in person either, but he's been on the show, and yeah, what a wealth of knowledge as well.
Yeah.
Nat
Yep.
Joe 825, not sure who that is, but says they remember hearing about phantom reports on tour. What were they?
Okay, good question. That's a very good question. So on the tour, the format is not balanced, first of all. The first day is the Pro-Am day, and the lanes get about 90 lines per alley bed. And no house in the world enjoys that much lineage. Okay. That's the equivalent of like 7 leagues bowling. So the first day on Wednesday, there's 48 lines per alley bed. That's like 3 leagues. Okay. The next day on Thursday, they cut the field down and there's 32 lines per alley bed. So it goes from 100 lines, basically 90 lines, depending on how big the Pro-Ams, to 48, to 32, to 16. So every day the lineage gets cut back. Okay.
Yep.
Now, when we first go into a bowling center, most places, 95% of the places, would block them up. With lanes be all walled up, house shot. And it would take 2 or 3 days to get that wall out of there, because it has memory. When you keep piling oil 10 to 10, you can't clean it all off in one day. You think it's gone, but there's a memory of that still in there.
Sure.
So it takes 2 to 3 days to get that out. So throughout the week, you got a different pattern out there. Even though God himself could do them every day, they'd come out different.
Yeah.
And now one of the problems is with the tour and their format is the first day, if you're on B squad, for instance, okay, A squad would come in and bowl 6 games, B would bowl 6, A would come back and bowl 6. Well, when B squad would come back that night, they would move in the 4th and 5th arrow and whack them. I mean, these guys, they didn't need them to be walled up at the 2nd arrow. If there was still oil in the back end and you could lay it down in the left-hander's lay down area, which not used up, man, you'd have a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
So often, too often, B squad would whack them. Now the next day they come back and they bowl early the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Now the unknowledgeable guys said, "Shit, last night I averaged 248 playing the 4th arrow. I'm going to start there."
Oh boy.
Well, they didn't develop at 9 o'clock in the morning. They didn't develop till 7 o'clock at night. Yep. So now they would play in there, and now they're ball with duck hook at 25 feet. What'd you do? You changed them, Why would we change them? They were beautiful yesterday. Yeah. So there was a constant argument always going on. And we would try to balance the format to get it balanced, but we never could. And you could never convince them that, well, the lanes are different on Monday than they are on Tuesday and different on Thursday. But at times, sometimes like Rhode Island one year, in the middle of the tournament, there was a snowstorm and the roof caved in and the lanes were all full of ice and sealing tiles and all that. So it took us all night to clean it up. And so we went to the tournament director, Harry Golden, says, Goose, that was his nickname. They caved in. We got to announce that to the players. So, okay, the Phantom came in. He said the roof caved in. So we did them. They might be different. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then occasionally there would be a machine failure. A part would break on a lane machine because they were all screwed up most of the time because they're all designed to block the lanes. Okay. Sure. There were parts taken out. Pads were cut so that oil just 10 to 10. And we would try to use the machine because that was one of the rules. Oh, you got to use the machine that the house uses. We stopped doing that. We started using the spray gun a lot.
Yeah.
So there would be times when for instance, another thing would be the oil temperature. A can of oil, if it's in the back room and it's warm, it'll stay a certain viscosity. Okay. If it's left out, and it snows, that oil is hard as a rock because it's frozen. And now the ball's going to act differently.
Sure.
So there were a lot of things that we would do. we would take the oil and put it in the manager's office so it was warm all night to try to avoid these changes during the day and the night. And you know what's funny is it's still going on. They just don't call it a Phantom Report now. I got all kind of friends still out there. Wish you'd come back here. I ain't coming back no more. I came back 5 times. I've written 10 things, a bunch of pamphlets and 3 books explaining all the problems out there. And they're not going to change, because it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah.
There's a thing in there. I don't want to butt in, but Jeff Riggles, he tells a story about during the week. Every week there'd be a champion, and there'd be a party in the bar, and I'd be watching the show on TV because they'd have a short circuit, or whatever you call that. Not short circuit, but
closed circuit.
Closed circuit. I told you it wasn't mechanical. Yeah, so I'd be watching in there. Well, the guy would come in and win. Yeah, hey, and he'd tell the bartender, set the thing at 500. Free drinks, and I'd be in the corner, and I'd be sipping my own 7-Up, and somebody would say to him, "What about Lenny?" He goes, "What about him? I bowl good. I didn't need him." They wouldn't even buy me a drink, because it was them. But if they bowled bad, it was me.
Yeah.
So I was the umpire, but I understood that, and I understood it from Billy and all the guys that I roomed with and all that before I even took the job. So. Yeah. And then I found out early about the mental game with Billy that the great players didn't let the hurdles get in the way. A lot of guys give up. They leave a 10-pin. That's good. Well, if you're going to be a good lane man, you better be able to take the good with the bad, and
sure.
keep a good mind. So I try to do that all those years.
How about in the 70s when Ski Feremski kind of gave you the nickname that would evolve to become the Phantom?
Boy, yeah, you've done some research. He was one of the characters of all time. A lefty, I loved him. In fact, I'm kind of praying for his wife. She's not doing too well right now, and he was going to be on my show, and he was going to talk about Butch Gerhardt, which still goes back to the old days. We're still friends, lefties, righties. It don't make any difference. But we went to Florida, down in Miami. And it was an opera house, that they converted into a bowling center because I guess opera dried up and nobody was going. So they bought the place, made it into a bowling alley. Well, we went in there, and there's sawdust everywhere, and you can't pick it all up. And the worst thing you can have is, like on the approach, sawdust, you slide all the way to pin deck, right?
Yeah.
So we would spend all night, 4 nights in a row, just mopping up the lanes, mopping up the walls, picking up all the bowling balls, the house balls. And it was 4 nights of 12 hours, basically coming at midnight and cleaning the place up. So it's Friday, and they're bowling the finals, and Ski's out there. And he spots me in the crowd, and he was a gabber. He would talk. He came back and goes, "What are you doing here?" I says, "Doing the lanes." "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm watching you guys." "How come you haven't been here watching?" I says, "Because this place was a dump, man. We had to clean it up every night, blah, blah, blah." "What do you mean?" So I had to tell him. It was all dusty. It was another place before. And he goes, "This was an opera house?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we haven't seen you, so you must be the Phantom of the Opera House." That name stuck ever since then. They still call me the Phantom.
Yeah.
What's that, 50 years?
And you've, when you started your show, it was Phantom Radio. I'm putting the link up so people know where to access it. You can also find it on podcasting platforms. But tell me about the development of that. How did that work?
Okay, when I went to work for Kegel, I left the tour in 95. John Davis, I wish you'd have got to know him. A genius, loved bowling. That was his whole life. And we had a lot of talks. He liked my knowledge. He grew up in the bowling center. His father had 5 kids. And they vowed that someday they would have a bowling alley that everything worked. The ball cleaners would work. There would never be an out of range, nothing. And they were all mechanics. So geniuses with wires. He knew the yellow wire, what that did, the black wire, I have no idea. I'd blow myself up if I had to do anything like that. But anyway, so I got to know John real well, and we exchanged a lot of stories. And in fact, he brought his machine down to Florida, down there at Shore Lanes, and we used it for a tournament. And John, wow, man, you took a chance. You've helped me. I said, I can see this machine's going to be good. It needs some more improvements. I've got to put more oil out, blah, blah, blah. And so he says, well, when you get done on the tour, he says, I want you to come to work for me. He says, and we had many discussions over the phone, hours. He says, people need to know what you know. Okay, well, John knew everything locally. I knew the tour, okay? Mm-hmm. He didn't know anything about the tour. Had no idea what it was like. That's a zoo out there. I mean, if you don't get out of the way, they'll run right over you. It's dog eat dog. Sure. So I left in 95, went to work for John. I said, what do you want me to do? Well, we're going to start a foundation. We're going to make bowling better, blah, blah, blah. We started doing worldwide tournaments all around the world. We'd be the official lane maintenance of the World Bowling Association. We'd go to Turkey, Hungary, everywhere around the world. And we started teaching about topography and all that. Because what would happen would be, there's big bowling's huge around the world, right? It's not so big. I mean, it's big here, but you go to Malaysia, you better call 3 weeks in advance to get an open play, right? So they wanted better lane conditions, because the same thing was happening there that was happening here years ago, okay? Because Malaysia and around the world. So anyway, we told them about different formats. We told them about topography, blah, blah, blah. And so John became like the head of the technical delegates around the world. These guys are huge. I don't know if you've had much contact with foreign dignitaries or not, but these people
next to none.
These people are business people. I mean, they don't have time to play. I mean, they're all business. I don't care if they're German or Japanese or whatever. They're business people. So when you do something, you do it. So, and you got to make it right, and you got to justify it. There's no excuses. Anyway, so we started doing that around the world, and I was on the technical committee. We go around the world doing lanes, and then that's when John Forrest and John Janowitz started doing lanes around the world. Okay. And teaching people based on all the things that we all gabbed about. At Kegel was totally unreal. This sounds weird, but when I went to work for them, they had this big billboard. It was one of those freestanding, black with white letters you put on there, and it was on the front door. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Len Nicholson. PBA Lane Maintenance. He's coming to work for Kegel, blah, blah, blah. So, man, I walk in, my head's as big as a room, right? Here's this big company that's just starting out. And Mark Davis, John's brother, is out on the concourse. He's got 4 guys. He's teaching about the lane machine. And so I'm walking across to go to John's office. I didn't know where the office was. And he goes, hey, Lenny, because I met Mark because we'd gotten together a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And he goes, why don't you come down here? And 2 of the 4 guys, mechanics, oh, I know him because I met him somewhere on the road, right? Yeah. So I go down, so Mark, knowing that I don't know shit about wires and plugs and stuff, he goes, do me a favor. He says, go in the back. He says, and there's a big wall, and it's got all the tools that we ever need. And if the tool's missing, there's an outline of it, in black, so you'll know it's somewhere. Yeah. I need a 3/4, a half inch wrench, a 3/4, and a 1.5. He says, all right. So I run in the back, and it's humidity. It's hot, and I'm fat. So I run down the side, and I go in the back, and I'm looking, and there's the 3/4, there's the half inch, and the guy comes by and goes, what do you want? I said, I'm looking for the 1 3/4. Or 1.5, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. He goes, oh, Walt's got it down the other end. I go all the way down the other end. Where's Walt? Oh, he's over here. He sends me to Dennis over here. Dennis sends me to Another guy, I'm sweating like a pig. So the guy says, it's outside over in our warehouse. I go in the warehouse. Oh, Dennis has it. I says, I've already talked to, oh, there's another Dennis. Oh, so I go back and I'm sweating and I'm walking across and here's Mark Davis and these four guys laughing their ass off. There's no 1.5, They sent me on one of the wild goose chases to a rookie,
Yeah.
So now I'm sweating and I go meet John. He goes, you got to come in the office, the tech office, all my lane guys and all that. Yeah. There's cubicles. They all got a computer and they all got programs and it's all alphabetical order. I've never seen a computer in my life. I had a spray gun, I was like the sixth best lane man there, There's five guys better, and I thought I was number one. Right? So yeah, I learned a whole lot down there with John. Then he says, you need to teach people what you know. And back then, the podcasts were pretty much new.
Yeah.
And he says that's the best form of advertising. He says let's get them on there and just tell stories and interview people. And I don't know if you looked at the list. I don't think I sent you a list, but I'm like you. I got coaches. I got Hall of Famers. I got lefties. I got righties. I got women. I got presidents. I got this and I got that. I got some of everything. Trying to learn as much as we can. And just so you know, and I know you probably do the same thing. In my opinion, and I'm no pro, but when you're an interviewer, you're getting their opinion. I'm not going to tell them what my opinion is. If they ask me, I'll tell them, but I'm not going to argue with the guest. It's his opinion. No, he's the guest. So tell me what you think, Yeah. So that's the way it's worked. And people aren't intimidated because some people might think I know more than them. And if I ask them a question, they might be afraid to answer because I'm going to come back. I never do that. That's your opinion. You've learned that from your experiences. So anyway, that's
that. Yeah. And the thing that I love about your show is, as you mentioned, it's story sharing. It's, telling people what you know, but from a unique perspective. And that's kind of what I do here. And the story sharing part of this is always going to resonate, isn't it?
Well, we don't track our customers and all that. The foundation is what was started, and that's an arm of Kegel that's non-income producing. And John didn't want it to be an income producing. He wanted to share knowledge as much as he can. And John used to go around the world and just stay there for weeks on end sometimes, pass along as much knowledge. He didn't think that he could sell this information. Some of this information you only learn through experience. So the part of that is with the show, we never wanted to put our word over anybody else's. And we send out, what do you call it? Resume, not a resume, but asking them questions because we got a lot of people. We got 2,000, not listeners all the time, but on our email list. All right.
Oh, okay.
We'll send that out about twice a year. What do you like about the show? Oh, we like the bowling tips. What else you like about the show? We like the stories. That's the top two things they want. They don't care about Mama Brown's cookies I'm trying to sell, if I'm trying to do that. They don't care about that. They want to hear stories, And the funniest part about the stories is you can't make them up. They're just hilarious. If you can tell them all, you can't.
Yeah.
My final book's going to be final, man. I'm going to put a lot of funny stuff in there. It's going to have this, what do you call that kind of wrap around it? You can't open it and look at it like Hustler,
Oh,
you can't peek at it. You can't peek at it because there's going to be some great stuff in there.
You think I know what Hustler's wrapped in? I don't know.
You laughed like you sounded like you knew.
Yeah, don't say that while Mrs. Pfeff is within earshot. But no, how far in the future do you see Phantom Radio going? I mean, like I said, you're doing this every week. It resonates. Do you just keep going until whenever?
Well, in my opinion, I'm going to keep going till the last day of my breath. Okay, because that's the way John was, and I loved that man. He was unbelievable, unselfish. When he was just starting out with the company, the USBC came to him, and well, here's AMF and there's Brunswick, and they put up 50,000 for a brick out in front. And you're a distributor, you're a manufacturer. We need 50,000. John didn't have 50,000, brand new, but he took it out of the bank and he gave it to him, even though he's brand new. These guys are worth millions, right? He still did it. And one time I says to John, John, and we had a lot of long talks, 2 and 3 hour talks. And a lot of times his wife was sitting right there because, we talk about everything. And so I says, John, what, just like you said, what's your goal?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, he says, number one, he says, I got to make sure I got enough work to take care of my 100 families that work for me. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going to keep working, inventing things, making them, because I don't want to ever lay anybody off. Mm-hmm. He says, and really that crew down there, that staff, you talk about a bunch of smart people that are dedicated to the game. I mean, there's not one goof off down there. If they goof off, they're goofing off down the street next month, because they weed themselves out really easily.
Yeah.
And there's quality guys down there. And so that was number one, that you don't want to lay anybody off. And number two was, I got to fix this game, because that's what his father wanted him to do. And all four, there was 5 brothers. 4 of them all got involved in bowling. One didn't. He went somewhere else, become a mechanic somewhere else.
Yeah.
But John was an unbelievable guy. Anybody that knows him, you could talk to people that knew him and have 100 shows, because he was just an amazing man. Just well missed.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we said he won the Triple Crown, What do you mean I won the Triple Crown? Well, Brunswick sued you, okay, and you beat them. AMF sued you twice, and you beat both of them. You got the Triple Crown. And they all told him, we're going to bury you, because John had this machine, and once that machine got shown, their machines were pieces of garbage. They were like Tinker Toys, right? They couldn't repeat from one lane to the next. Now he's got a machine. You push the button on lane 1, you go in the back and work for 2 hours, and it's all done down in lane 60, right? It's automatic. And you know how much he had to work to figure, because their battery run, and the battery runs down as it gets tired, right? So if it's a 60-lane house, it doesn't have as much power in lane 60, so it's not going to put out as much oil and go as far. But he figured it out how to do that.
Oh,
and that's what's that guy's name? Musk or something? It's
Elon Musk.
Yeah. John's, that's in the category he is.
Yeah. The other thing that you do pretty regularly is on the Facebook group that we were talking about before, your weekly Q&As on Balls and Babes Bowling Group. Tell us about that.
Okay. I met Sherry over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I saw somebody recommended I go look, and I saw how much enthusiasm she had, how much, she was doing. And I emailed her a couple times. Boom, I got an answer right back. So I says, listen, if you ever get any questions about lanes, I'll be glad to help you. And I'll give away a free book for the best question. She goes, oh, that would be great. So we've been doing that now for, 4 or 5 months. I kind of lost track of when we started, but every Wednesday morning I come to my computer, and she usually has the first question, because she's an avid bowler, and she's got some good questions. Why is this? Why is that? What did that? And I know she gets overwhelmed with work, because a couple times she didn't have a question ready. And I wrote her a note, are you okay? Because when she's not on there, I worry about her, because she burns that candle at both ends. She not only runs all those people, but she bowls in the tournaments, and she's hustling this and doing this and that. But she's awesome. Anybody that promotes a game like her, I'd be glad to help. No charge, I'm not rich, but I'm not going to charge her anything and pass along information. That's free.
Yeah.
If you're giving a lesson, that's different. You're right there with somebody, but this is a general thing. If they read it, they read it. If they don't, well, that's up to them,
Yeah.
But
If you hit that question of the day, oh baby, this is a great book.
well, thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's basically the top 60 moments in the PBA for whatever year that was.
Yeah, that was like an anniversary season, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 3 years ago, whatever.
60th anniversary. Yep.
Yeah, 60th anniversary. They had the top 60 moments
Mhm.
at the PBA, right? One was Don Johnson, face down,
Face down.
299, all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of things you can write about.
Yeah.
If you have time.
Right. Yeah. I asked her, I said, we see it. It seems popular. How popular is it? She says, how much activity it generates varies, but it's actually more popular than it would appear. Even though we don't necessarily have a lot of people asking questions, we have a lot of people who follow it and then reach out to let her know how much they enjoy the discussions and how much they learn from it. I mean, that's the whole goal, right?
Yeah, it's something's kind of weird. People are really kind of embarrassed to ask questions in one way or another.
Yeah.
It's either they don't want to show that they're not as smart as they thought they were, and they don't want somebody that they don't even know telling them what it's supposed to be like or what have you.
Sure.
It's kind of funny when you give lessons and you're down there with somebody. You can't imagine well, you probably can, but how many questions they ask you when you're face to face on the approach,
Yeah.
Like I've had people that average 220. You say, what are those dots out there for? They had no idea what the dots were.
Yet they're averaging 220.
Yeah. Well, well, what happens if they hook? I throw it harder. Oh, well, wait a minute here. We got to talk.
Yeah. Sherry says we've been doing Ask Len for almost a year. So
wow, has
there
it
you
been
go.
that long?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Hey, Sherry, I got to give a new contract. Year 2 will be free.
There you go. And Jonathan NG says hello. He says he misses the stories that you told him at Bowl Expo a few years ago in Vegas. And thanks for the book and autograph.
I remember he had a question one week. I can't remember the question, but you know what I wanted Sherry to do, but she's too busy. And I probably could have done it too, but just put all those questions aside. We'll write a book about it, Sherry's questions or whatever, But I know she's busy and with the answers. I mean, it'd be a handbook for somebody at League. Just look at, you're leaving a lot of 2, 4, 5s. What's the reason for that? Yeah. I got a good story about that. You want to hear a quick one?
Please. Yeah.
All right. So I'm rooming with Joe Berardi. He comes out as a raw rookie from the Bronx. Billy Hardwick had met him when he was 14 years old. He's bowling a junior tournament. And he says, when are you going to bowl the tour, son? Oh, when I'm 18, man. Well, when I'm 18, I'm going on the tour. All right. Long story short, he comes out on the tour. He rooms with me. He's nuts. He's from the Bronx, He's into Bruce Lee and all the kung fu and all that. He's got a 9-inch serrated knife in his briefcase in case any trouble, right? Because he's from Bronx. So anyway, he's with me for 2 or 3 years. Okay. So Earl Anthony comes over to me. He goes, when are you going to teach that kid how to win? I says, well, I've taught him everything I know. He says, well, why don't you watch him? He says, and you can figure it out if you pay attention. I says, well, tell me. He goes, not until I retire. I don't want him beating me. He says, that kid's good.
Yeah.
And so I go back and I tell Joe, I says, Joey, Earl says, you're doing something wrong. Oh, he's a lefty. He don't know. Blah, blah, blah. Because the righties and the lefties back then hated each other. Okay. They were stealing money from each other, right? That's what they thought. So anyway, 2 years goes by. Joey's been out there 4 or 5 years. He's never won, but he's made a lot of finals, cashed a lot of times. Earl comes to me and he goes, I'm leaving next week. He says, I live right across the bay from Earl in the Bay Area. We used to play golf all the time. We were really good friends. So anyway, long story short, which I told you before, it's impossible. It's all my friends tell me that too. I'm not as bad as Lickstein, though. Oh my God. I'll never call him up on the phone. He's on my show a lot, but I sent him a text. And I go, I'm on the car right now. I can't call. It's $400 fine talking on the phone. This guy.
He's so great, though.
He's the best.
Yeah.
I remember everything. He remembers the date. I can't stand it. Yeah. I don't know the date. I don't even know the year, right? And he'll let you know. So anyway, so he says, I'm leaving. I go, where are you going? I'm retiring. Screw this. I says, well, what are you going to tell me? He goes, well, what happens when he leaves a 10-pin? I says, he makes it. He says, yeah, I know. He makes 99% of his 10-pins. He says, what's he doing the next frame? I go, I don't know. He goes, well, you ought to pay attention. So I don't say nothing to Joe. The next tournament, next day, a few frames go by, ring in 10. Joey makes it. Goes to the left lane, leaves a 2-4-5. Makes it. Now everything goes back to normal. He leaves a 10-pin in the 8th frame, makes it. Goes to the left lane, leaves a 2-4-5. I says to Earl, Earl, he's leaving a 2-4-5. He goes, yeah, muscle memory in his arm from throwing it so hard at the 10-pin. He does that on the first ball in the next frame. He goes right by the head pin. He says, he's got to have that swing the same on a spare. This was back in the day. Nowadays, they're throwing it straight and hard, a lot harder, but it was different back in there on wooden lanes and all that. Sure. So I tell Joey, he goes, oh, bullshit, that ain't, yeah. I said, well, all right. 2 tournaments later, he won his first one.
Wow.
He does no 2-4-5s after a 10-pin. He slowed it down.
Yeah. You created a monster.
And then he won almost every major,
Yeah.
Firestone, he won the U.S. Open. He won them all. Yeah.
Wow.
But you have muscle memory, and that's what that was.
Yes, sir. Apparently that candle isn't burnt out on both ends because Sherry says we can work on that for sure. So coming to a bookshelf near you, right?
Oh. Yeah. You know what? When she speaks, E.F. Hutton listens.
Well, if you get that going, I'll be happy to write you some kind of foreword or something like that.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah.
We can say it was born on the show. So, I told you before, and people who watch the show know that we go off the sheet by asking you to challenge somebody to appear on a future episode. Doesn't have to be the greatest bowler in the world, but somebody who, is passionate about the sport and has a unique story to tell. So,
wow, that kind of leads right up to Sherry. Have you had her on yet?
I haven't. I've been trying, and she knows that.
I tell you, she's a world of knowledge. Tell her if she doesn't know something, look it up. I gave her the answer a few times over the last year. But no, she needs to get on there and promote her tournament club and all the things she does.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know a few of those mechanics down there in Vegas, and when she has a tournament once in a while and she needs something done differently with the lanes, she's had me talk to the mechanic or whatnot, but she's got a pretty good knowledge of it now. And that's a world of things for her to do. Because if she can promise her bowlers, we're going to do this week in the lanes, but that versatility is what bowlers really want.
Yep.
They want versatility. Of course, the people that just like the lanes to be blocked, they're not going to show up for all these other tournaments, but you will have a lot more bowlers.
Oh, yeah.
They like versatility. They really do.
Yes, they do. Sherry, you know what this is? Free advertising. Advertising. Come on the show.
Exactly. Speaking of that, I'm booked up 4 or 5 weeks in advance. I put them in the can because you never know if somebody's going to show up or not. And I only advertise 1 week in advance. And I've had a few guys not be able to make it. They were out of town or what have you. But in 4 or 5 weeks, I want you on my show. How about that?
That would be great. It would be an honor. I would absolutely do that.
I'm going to write it in. I'm going to look and see what the date is, and then we'll advertise you coming on, and I'm going to put you under the hot lights.
There you go. I would enjoy that immensely, and yeah, thank you. If people want to reach out or have questions about your show, we gave the link earlier, and I'll put it back up, but it's kegel.net/phantom. But how do they reach out to you?
They can text me.
Okay.
I answer all texts. Okay, and that is, how do I give you my text number?
How about on Facebook? Is that easier?
Yeah, Facebook. They can get me through Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on Messenger and all that.
Yep. That's how we've been corresponding, is on Facebook Messenger. So it's been pretty easy. But Len Nicholson, you can find him on Facebook. And, Phantom Radio every week, kegel.net/phantom. Fantastic show. And he's interviewed them all. And then he's gone back and done tribute episodes, to great players of the past, which I personally find very interesting. One of my favorites is the ski episode where he talked about Jack Biondolillo.
Yeah, Jack was great. We lost him too early too.
Yeah, for sure.
Time flies when you're having fun, boy. I'll tell you what. The trouble is, and I said this, I'm not the first, but nobody beats Father Time.
Yep.
He's undefeated.
Yes,
so we got to get everything done before Father Time knocks on our door.
Yeah. Yes,
I've never seen anybody yet that got away.
For sure. Sherry says we'll talk about it, so maybe we've gotten her. But yeah, she also says that it'll be a great show, and yeah, I appreciate that because, like I said, big fan of the show, and glad that you're doing it. It's just great content, and bowling always needs more of that. Speaking of content, we have another show coming up tomorrow night. We're talking house shots and sports shots with one of the hosts of the Bowlers Show and the Breakdown Pair on YouTube. Luke Rosedahl is coming on. He's from Topeka, Kansas. He'll have his bowling story, his history in the pro shop side of the biz, and the work he's doing these days in the industry. So that'll be tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central. Please check us out, either live or on replay. Len, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Andrew, I really enjoyed it. I've been looking forward to it. And I think I mentioned I'm not too mechanically inclined, but I got a little trouble starting it off tonight. But one thing about me, not knowing anything about mechanics and all that, one time they sent me down to get a Phillips, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I came back with milk and magnesia.
It all goes down the hatch, right?
All right. Well, yeah. I'll be getting in touch with you about lining up our show, and okay. I'll let you know as soon as possible.
Awesome. Really appreciate that. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great week. Be just and fear not, and we will see you again tomorrow night.